starting our Twitter space here. I was disconnecting and reconnecting my microphones here. So there were some folks who were saying they were having some sound difficulties. Some of them, a bunch of folks were not. So in this case here, I've gone ahead and restarted it. Everything's good on my end. So if you're having issues, you probably just want to check back with a playback or something. But in any case, I'm doing tonight's Twitter space here because I was on yesterday with Just Eve and with some of the other folks over there, and we were discussing, really they were discussing about FBI on trial, but we were discussing about whether or not, the part I was taking a look at was culture. And the subject, one of the things that came up was Luther Campbell, who now, 30 years plus after Two Live Crew is defunct, he's trying to trade on some nostalgia. And ordinarily, I don't have an issue with that. Go ahead and get your money or whatever. There's no money in it. But if you want to go ahead and get some shine, go ahead. But when you start weighing in on us, or when you start becoming disruptive about it, and one of the things they start doing nowadays, they start playing dumb about things now. That's going to be an issue that I'm going to have. I'm going to have that issue. And of course, Bowling Ball Martin came in. So obviously it's an immigrant jamboree. And then, of course, we always come up. So the question that's been raised here is about the culture. Before I get into that, for those of you who didn't hear me yesterday because their recording hadn't gone well in that regard, they were, I want to clear up a couple of things here. I wanted to clear up a couple of things. Luther Campbell doesn't really have any credibility to speak. He doesn't have any credibility to speak. That's the problem. And what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is that Two Live Crew was not significant. They were infamous, but not famous. So when you come back decades later, attempting to speak on these things, attempting to set yourself up as a forum where we should get together, we got to look at your credentials. Putting together a smut album back during the era when a parental advisory would get you tons of publicity, that's not an accomplishment. For those of you under the age of 40, back in the day when you got that parental advisory sticker on your album, wow, that was scandalous. That was guaranteed headlines all over the place back then. So everybody was trying to make an explicit album if their talent was mediocre, for the purposes of getting that sticker, because that was guaranteed publicity. So everybody was really, really looking for that. With that being the case, Two Live Crew looked for that also. Hey, it worked. A lot of folk were doing it. NWA admitted it. They were doing it, being more shocking and more heinous, got headlines, and it drove album sales. That's great. The next thing you recognize, though, is that as time has gone on, it's passed them by, and we've had some time to reflect on it. And one of the things we've had a chance to reflect on is that, did this really serve us? Did this really serve us? Was this really in our best interest? And we've had an opportunity to reflect on this, and the answer is no, you didn't actually contribute anything. We didn't need musical shock jocks. What we needed were people who could contribute to this. We needed people who could contribute to this. That's what we needed. So these other folk didn't really have a whole lot to contribute in that regard. And so what they were doing was they were getting a name for themselves and then attaching themselves to us. And now 30 years later, we're saying, why don't we go ahead and disconnect from that? Why don't we go ahead and disconnect from that? And that's what we're doing now. So if he wants to speak on these things, the first thing we have to ask is, what are your credentials? What's your credibility to do that? And what we're saying is, at this point, not really. We recognize you as a historical anecdote, but you don't have the credibility to speak in this space. What you can do is you can sit down, you can listen, and you can learn. And tonight, I'm going to give you your first lesson. What is our culture? America's foundational. What is our culture? And the first thing I want to introduce you all to is the concept that our culture is dominant. These other folks have a submissive culture. They have a culture of being submissive, from their dress to their speech patterns to the way they live. Because you see, culture is simply what you do. That's what culture is. Culture is simply what you do. And if you are a dominant culture, like ours has been, then you don't sit down, you don't back down, and everything you do and say expresses that. When you take a look at our dress, our traditional dress as foundational Black people, our traditional dress is different. It is different from white society. It's damn sure different from immigrants. Our styles have been different. When you take a look at J. Walker and Ida B. Wells, they didn't look like they didn't have the same look as the white women of their time. When you come to the 20th century, Dorothy Dandridge, Lena Horne, they didn't look like the white women. They didn't look like Cardi B either, but they didn't look like the white women. They were different. They were different. And that's what we've been. When you take a look at the men, everything from Zoot Suits forward, take a look at Cab Calloway, Duke Ellington. We look different. We wore different. We walk different. We didn't get it from white folk and damn sure didn't get it from immigrants. When you take a look at automobiles, including the one Madam C.J. Walker had, and going forward, those things speak to our attitude about these things. These are not coping mechanisms. This is not, oh, we made just a different style of food because we were left with certain parts of the pig or whatever. We're talking about when every step along the way, everything we touched, we changed. Everything we came in contact with wasn't when it did not have to be. It was functional, but we gave it an it factor that everybody said, whoa, this has transformed everything. When you take a look at cars and the way we did it. See, rap music didn't give us big wheels. You can go all the way back to the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. You can see the wheels on the car, the grill. We gravitated to a certain thing. We gravitated to a certain look, a certain style. We gravitated to that because that's our culture. We gravitated to that because that's our culture. We gravitated to that because that's who we are. We gravitated to that because that's how we operate. That's not a vestige of slavery. That's who we are. These other folks have had an opportunity to do that. These other folks have had an opportunity to do that, and where they come from, you don't see that. You don't see innovation going on. There's not innovation coming out of the Caribbean. There's not a culture of innovation. There's not a culture of innovation coming out of Africa. All the innovation is coming out over here. We're the ones bringing new things, and we didn't just start doing it 10 years ago. We've been doing it for hundreds of years. We've been doing it for hundreds of years. That's a quantitative difference. That's a difference between us and everyone else. When you take a look at choices of dress, choices of car, how you use them, then when you get into real things like the stuff that civilizations are remembered for. Civilizations are remembered for your music. Civilizations are remembered for your diet. Civilizations are remembered for your lexicons. Civilizations are remembered for your attitudes toward things. That's unique for us. That's unique. We don't have holdovers from these other places. We don't have those types of holdovers. For example, our attitude about things. When it comes, it's not just about having a car. Our attitude about automobiles has been different. Ours are bigger. Ours are more in your face. Ours are more assertive, if you will, because that's our attitude, our dress, everything else. That is what it is. Traditional Africans don't. Their pants, you can see an immigrant's pants from a mile away. And I'm not saying that to be degrading. What I'm saying is that it is an outgrowth of their attitude. That's what I'm saying. When you talk about the things that get passed on for centuries, let's talk about music for a moment. Our music didn't just come from nowhere. Our music has come from a special place. Our music didn't just come from nowhere. Our music has come from a place of, there are two things that dominate our music over the centuries. And it's either going to be entrepreneurship or resistance. It's either going to be entrepreneurship or resistance. That's what it's going to be. It's going to either be entrepreneurship or resistance, and we pass that down. These other folks, their music usually tells you about getting drunk, gutter sex. But what they don't have is a history of resistance. They don't have a history of asserting themselves. Now, in case somebody tries to make the point that, well, this is some coping mechanism for slavery, please remember here, when you're talking about fight songs and battle hymns, that comes from your culture. The Irish, the Scottish, the British. We developed this all on our own. We developed this all on our own. That's totally different from everyone else. We developed that all on our own. We came up with our own fight songs, our own fight culture. Didn't have to, and it sounded completely different from everybody else. You dance to ours, you pass it. Ours got passed around the world. The Star Spangled Banner did not get passed around the world. The Star Spangled Banner did not get passed around the world. The Star Spangled Banner wasn't something that other folks heard. I got to pick that up. When you talk about Public Enemy and NWA, you've got a whole bunch of folks. You thought Elvis was what the Asians imitated. Please. They don't imitate Elvis nearly as much as they imitate us. When you take a look at Tiananmen Square, in Tiananmen Square, they were holding pictures of Dr. King in Tiananmen Square. They were holding up pictures of Dr. King in Tiananmen Square. What does that tell you? That tells you we have a history of doing that. We have a history of setting the trend on these things. That's the difference. So in our culture, that's another matter. Now, for those of you listening here, apparently Twitter is having some issues. They're saying that some other folks out here are having the same issue with the audio. So apparently it's a bandwidth issue, I guess, with Twitter. And that's another thing right there. That's another thing right there. See, when we show up, things get hot. When we show up, things start popping. When we show up, we can move numbers. That's different. When we show up, numbers start moving. When we show up, things start innovating. We don't just look at it and treat it the same way. That's culture. That's what you do. That culture, and that is what you do. As foundational people, we're always trying to innovate and explore the next thing. Case in point, Caribbean music has sounded the same for the last few hundred years. It hasn't changed. It doesn't matter what style of music you're talking with us. It's not the same as it was 100 years ago, 50 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago. You see, our culture doesn't say stagnate. There's a reason why you can have a Ronald Isley working with gotta say it, R. Kelly or somebody else, please. But there's a reason why you can have that and they fit right in. And it's always been that way. You see, in other parts of society, they take their old folk in the music business, in technology, whatever, and go retire them. You got to get out the way. As we get older, we can still hang up in there. As we get older, we see that is our culture, is the ability to do that. Our culture is the ability to innovate and adapt over time. That's what we do. No matter how old folk are, they can learn new techniques. You go and talk to somebody, I don't care who the black female is, you got a black woman, she's been doing hair for 50 years. She can learn new techniques tomorrow. She can learn new techniques tomorrow. You have a black man, I don't care if it was the Model T or the Tesla Model S. He's not afraid to get in there and learn either one. So not getting stuck and set in your ways, that's our culture. Meanwhile, back on the continent, just saying, meanwhile, back in the Caribbean, the music is the same. The only innovations they've made are the ones where they copycat us. Because our culture says we keep moving. Our culture says we keep moving and keep innovating. That's what we are. And back to that dominance thing, not only do we innovate, it's not change for the sake of change. We change, and then the rest of the society around us changes. Let's be clear about something. Let me hurt your feelings right quick. Black folk in Africa, the white folk in Africa don't dress like y'all. The white folk in Africa, they don't dress like, quote, the native blacks. They never have. Let me say that again. When you talk about culture, ours is a culture of dominance and influence. White folk dress like us. But even over there, where you're 90 and 95% of the population, they don't dress like you. You dress when you can, you dress like them. And who do they dress like? Oh, wait a minute, they're dressing like us. Never mind. I ain't dissing on anybody. I'm not dissing on anyone. I'm just sitting up here telling you the truth about it. But the reality is, if you think you're as influential as you might want to tell yourself, if you think you've got a culture that other people, if you think you have a culture that's somehow dominant, let's go ahead and compare apples to apples. And let's see who desires to dress like you, make their food like you, don't even get into dances. Let's be very, very clear. Nobody is twerking because their great-great-grandmama from Nigeria or Uganda came through the house. Nobody's doing that. That's not what's happening. Nobody is out here twerking because they had a long lost auntie from Kenya who they saw at the family reunion getting down. So go ahead and just hold that one. We didn't get twerking from you any more than you got your dancing from the hula dancers in Honolulu. Women been shaking their hips and shaking their butts all over the world. Take a look in Arab society. They have that same thing in Arab society. They have that in Hawaii. So women throwing their hips and throwing their butt cheeks has been around for thousands of years. Thousands. In places completely separated and alienated from each other. Thousands of years. So don't embarrass yourself by trying to make a claim on something we've created. Don't embarrass yourself. I'm trying to do you a favor. Don't embarrass yourself. When you talk about cultures, let's talk about anthropology. When you have an anthropologist, what does an anthropologist do when they're determining people's culture? They look at the way they dress. They look at the way in which they transported themselves. Did they use donkeys? Did they use horses? Use wagons? Look at the way in which they did things. How did they prepare their food? I was watching a documentary once that was talking about the ancient Hebrews and how they made unleavened bread. In some cases, now in our experience, bread is made in an oven, but in some of their areas, the way in which they made bread was basically by packing dirt on the ground. Yes, dirt. They would pack dirt on the ground. They basically would make a fire. And then once the soil got very, very hot, they would pour the dough onto it. And they would let it cook that way. You see, that's culture too. That's not just cooking some bread. That's the way in which you do something. By the way, if you all want to get a good education on that, you can go Google it and look it up. But the bottom line is that's how you do things. That's your culture. Might not work for everybody else. It might not go for everybody else, but that's culture. So if we're going to talk about that, the next thing we need to do is we need to talk about our culinary choices. Now, did you notice that, by the way, we've been on here for a minute now. I didn't start with food. I'm just now getting to that. If you really want to get funky about cuisine, by the way, as I was saying before, you got rice all over the world is what folk do with it. It's not the same in China as it is in Africa, as it is in Europe. It's not everybody doesn't treat it the same. When you talk about things like Spanish rice and whatnot, everybody doesn't treat it the same. And when you come to us, it's completely separate. Let's be very, very clear about something. You're only going to get so much mileage by trying to claim some similarity between the way the foundationals prepare food versus Africans. You're only going to get so much mileage out of that. How many of you here have been to one of those Nigerian restaurants up there in New York and Harlem? I have. How many of you have been to one? I have. You cannot compare the way that they prepare in anything with the way that we do. With Sylvia's right down the damn street. You can't compare those Nigerian restaurants to the way the black folk do things, to the way the foundationals do it. You can't compare those two things. Their food is totally foreign. It's totally foreign. There's no part of it that in any way resembles how we do it. Even when it wasn't dried out, because they left it up in the damn thing for hours in those heat pans. They left it in there for hours. You could sand the finish on your car with the chicken in there. But I digress. You have soul food restaurants around the world. You got soul food restaurants around the world. Tell me where your African cuisine, a specific one, is around the world and people are standing in line and raving about it. I ain't dissing anybody. What I'm saying is we've innovated on these things. We've created something new that did not exist before. And if you attempt to alter it in some way and change it to what you're used to, it doesn't make it better. It makes it worse. How many of you all have been to Sylvia's or someplace like that and you said to yourself, you know what, the rice is good, but if it tasted a little more like jollof, it'd be better. Not dissing anybody. I'm saying let's compare apples to apples. How many of you have been in a black-owned restaurant and told yourself, you know, if this steak tastes a little bit more like curry goat, it'd be slamming? Go to one of your Nigerian restaurants and start comparing the dishes there. And you know what? Go to your Caribbean spots too, as a matter of fact. Don't get me wrong, the meat pies can be okay. That's no problem there. But beyond that, I'm just saying. So if we're going to talk about how we do things, you want to talk about influence on the world. 13 American population has completely transformed the way that the world dresses, the way that the world talks, the way that the world prepares its meals, the way in which the world drives its cars. Remember, we were running around with 22-inch wheels. Now, I've got 3 full-size SUVs today made by 3 major manufacturers. 20 years ago, you couldn't really get 22-inch. The manufacturers weren't making 22-inch wheels, certainly not as a standard. Weren't making those standard, not even on their pickup trucks. I know, I was there. 22-inch wheels were not standard. You had big old thick tires, but the wheels were more like 18 inches. Don't believe me? Anybody who's got a 1999 or older vehicle, all of those wheels back then were like 18 inches, even on your pickup trucks. It wasn't standard to have 22-inch wheels. Income black folk in the 90s, and after a decade of style, our sensibilities as foundationals saying, no, the wheels y'all got here don't speak to our soul. This doesn't resonate with us. It's too tame. It's not assertive. We come from a dominant culture. We come from a dominant system of beliefs. Yours isn't the same. So we started making alterations and saying, no, this needs to be like us. Remember, the white folk were saying, you can't do that. The wheels are too big. You're going to throw off the suspension and the weights. Cars are engineered for a specific type of wheel to mess everything up. And actually, it did. It did. But guess what? We didn't stop doing it either. Yeah, it messed it up because cars are engineered for a certain wheel diameter. For those of you who know automotive engineering, actually the wheel is one of the most important, if not the most important element of a car, because it is the part that moves the vehicle and actually comes into contact with the road. Wheels, there's actually a whole school of engineering for simply a wheel. It looks simple, but it actually isn't. And a problem with the wheel can vibrate the entire vehicle apart. Wheels are not a little thing. And yet we said, yeah, this ain't right. And guess what? By the time you make it to 2010, 22-inch wheels as an option from the manufacturers. Pretty much every domestic manufacturer and some of the foreign ones had a 22-inch wheel option, and now they got 22s and 24s. Completely fully functional. They don't look weird, but they got that from us and our sensibilities. There were no white men at these corporations saying, we really need a 22-inch wheel. We were the ones who brought that in, and now the whole automotive industry has changed and followed our sentiments. That wasn't any immigrants doing that. That was our culture because we took a look at the wheels, whereas for white men, it tended to be about the grill. And don't get me wrong, I'm from the South, and big wheels and big grills. Starting with the wheels, we always gravitated to that, the part that moves, which technically speaking, you would think is the thing that would be least visible. Because when the car is rolling, it's not like you can make out the design of it, but we took a special interest in that. And the grills. And then the interior. In a manner in which other people didn't. That's our culture. When you're taking a look at hairstyles, dress, that's our culture. The automobiles reflect our personalities as a people. Our cars and what we drive and how we drive them and how they look, that reflects our personalities as a people. And now our personality of our food, of our dress, of our music, of our automobiles, our personality is now the standard of the world. 13% of the US population, which is not the biggest population in the world, less than 10% of the world's population, and yet, we who represent a fraction of the world's population, we now have dominated the way in which the world does things. We've dominated that. Show me the African equivalent across all these areas. We didn't have to be 90% of the American nation to get following our lead. We did that 13%. Show me the African equivalent, the Caribbean equivalent, the South American equivalent. Show it to me. But you better go hire a few anthropologists. You're going to be digging and looking for a while. And when we discuss the universal language, let me get back to talking about that. I think Twitter is trying to get this act together. Folks are telling me the audio was better, so Twitter is finally getting this act together, but we're going to do what we do because we are dominant and we're going to keep rolling. Our music throughout time as foundational people, descendants of slaves didn't just make music about, Lord have mercy. Our music has been rooted in resistance. Our music has been rooted in empowerment. From the old 100s forward, we took gospel songs and turned them into tools of empowerment for ourselves. And our music has really gravitated around two things: entrepreneurship and resistance. Then the immigrants showed up. Don't get me wrong, we always had some shake a tail feather music, but we didn't have no gutter stuff. Not till they showed up. Shout out Luther Campbell. We didn't have any gutter material till you all showed up. Daylight come, all right. We didn't have that until they got here. You see, we always had the work ethic. When you talk about grinding, we've always had that. It's always been about stacking the paper. It's always been about that. That's always been what it's been. That's not new. Ragtime, the precursor to jazz. We created ragtime, which was the precursor to jazz. We created jazz. You talking about money the whole damn way back. You talking about focus on stacking paper the whole damn way back. And even among so-called rich black folk today, the song hasn't changed. It hasn't changed. We are still doing the same thing we were always doing. The song hasn't changed. So if you want to discuss culture, that's our culture. Our culture is dominant. Our culture is assertive. Our culture is innovative. Our culture is not stagnant. Our culture is comfortable in its own skin. There's a reason why we influence everyone else, because you can see from the way we dress. When they talk about black men are cool and laid back. Do you know what that really means? That we're just comfortable in our own skin. Mitt Romney was infinitely wealthier than Barack Obama, and yet Barack Obama was channeling what we do because he couldn't channel it from his father. Oh, hell, you thought it was going to go somewhere different. Barack Obama was channeling the foundational black men that he knew. You know how you know? It wasn't his white granddaddy who raised him. And it damn sure wasn't his Nigerian father who ran out on him. He didn't learn any of that from them because he couldn't. And when he went to Chicago and went to Trinity, he joined a church where we from. He joined a church where we're from, where he could spend time around folk in the soil because he didn't have it. So he learned how to be, even in his case, an awkward imitation of us. And that was enough to get him all the way to the damn White House. As black men, we have been comfortable in our skin during slavery, but most importantly, outside of slavery. These were not coping mechanisms. Johnson wasn't operating a coping mechanism. He wasn't in chattel slavery. Earth, Wind, and Fire weren't operating coping mechanisms. We can go down the damn list. if you'd like. We weren't operating under coping mechanisms. These were innovations, not coping mechanisms. We are comfortable in our skin to a degree that nobody else is. That's the reason why you can literally look at a foundational Black man standing next to an African immigrant, and you can immediately tell simply by their body language which one is foundational and which one is the immigrant. You can immediately see it. That's the whole reason why they're upset today, because we're like, hey, we can see everything from y'all's hairline to your shoes to your pants to the way you wear them. It screams at us that you're different. And I'm not even going to say quote unquote bad, but it screams different. You're not comfortable in your own skin. You're not comfortable. Your clothes scream you ain't comfortable. Not to the level we are. Not talking about no sagging pants. I'm simply saying the way in which you wear your clothing, you're not comfortable in your skin the way we are. That's why when you see a group, oh, I got to say it. You all, if you're in Atlanta, Miami, New York, when you see them Caribbean immigrants walking down the street in Miami, oh, hell. When you see a group of them, if you see 4 dudes from Haiti, Dominican Republic, you see a group of 4 of them walking down the street, it takes you 0.05 seconds to tell where they're from. You can see it simply from the way they walk, what you call a gait. You can see it from the way they walk to the way they wear their clothes. You don't need anybody to inform you of what you're looking at. You know what you're looking at. In New York, same thing. Atlanta, same thing. Los Angeles, same thing. What does that tell you? That's their culture, and that's cool. That's their culture. But it's not ours. Ours is different. Everybody else has a lame, weak imitation of it, but ours is different. And it's dominant. So I hope I've cleared up some of the confusion that might have been going on about what constitutes foundational Black American culture. If I could sum it up for you in a word, it would be dominance. If I could sum it up for you in a word, it would be dominance. And you can see that asserting itself in everything we do, to the point that now, as 13% of the American population, which is only less than 10% of the world population, we are now influenced everybody. We've influenced everyone. Everyone around the world is now doing it our way. There's your proof of dominance. 1 billion people on the African continent, and how much influence has their dress, their food, their dance, their way of comporting themselves in public, behaving themselves, their cultural mannerisms? How many of those have taken flight? Hell, you got street dialect among Asians. I'm not talking about Asians in America. I mean Asians in Asia. Anybody who's been to Japan, anybody who's been to China, Vietnam, you've seen that. They're not just imitating anything, they're imitating one thing. Yeah, that's cultural dominance. That's dominance. So if anyone asks you, going forward, if you had any wonder about what that was or how that worked, I'm pleased to go ahead and take a little bit of time here tonight to go ahead and clear that up, so we can go with that straight. And it looks like Twitter has gotten a lot of their issues straightened out for them here. But before I do that, yes, let me go ahead and see if I can bring somebody up here. Dr. Black, your life is calling. I've gone ahead and invited you to speak, sir. Hurry, step right up. Don't be shy now. He had a whole bunch of questions on my page. He had a number of questions here. So now we're going to go ahead and give him an opportunity to speak on that. Don't be shy now, sir. That's not a good look. Don't be shy now. I've invited him to speak a few times now. Let's not get ourselves banned for trolling. He had a whole bunch to say here before. Okay, it looks like he's trying not to accept it. You had a lot to ask here before. This was not, I'm not requesting that you pick up the mic, sir. I am assertive. This is an order to pick it up, not a request. You had a whole lot to ask before. You need to pick up the mic. You're sounding, you're acting very immigrant-y right now. I'm trying to give you a better opportunity here. Let's not be immigrant-y. Let's not do that. Not a good look for you. Well, since he has decided that he is not going to accept that, he's probably going to have to be removed here. So he's had his opportunity to speak. Since he's decided to cower, on the one hand, you can't blame him. Let's go ahead here and let me see. Moses 7, go ahead and unmute yourself.
TVA, thanks for the space. Thanks for having me on. I just want to make a quick point here. I was in one of Luke's space 2 months ago. I worded the title, "Why Are FBA House Out of Order?" And everyone that came on the space was running on that title. But me, I came on the space and I said I beg to differ. FBA House is in order. Matter of fact, had FBA been doing what they're doing right now back in 2006, 2008, we would have G-check everyone to get what we need. And I stated the obvious why FBA House is in order, because the media, politicians, everyone has been forced to speak about our claims, stuff that concerns us, and we're breaking ground. We're having Congress revoke a lot of stuff that was supposed to be going to illegals. Look, we are making waves, and if you see Luke and Roland pop in their faces, they're clout chasing because they know this is the wave. I land. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for joining us here. We appreciate that. Let me go ahead and get Boston ISUPK. Go ahead and unmute yourself. Okay, Boston ISUPK. Go ahead and unmute yourself. Okay, Boston here is being abducted. Let me get Black Pressure Chamber. Go ahead and unmute yourself. Okay, I'm wondering if they're having problems now. Black Pressure, unmute yourself. Okay, Eve, are they playing with us tonight?
They're playing with us tonight. I hope you can hear me better now. I'm off the road.
Okay. Well, not really sure what's going on with folks here, but if you're playing on the phones, I'm going to figure you're just trolling, so I'm going to make sure you stay removed. Let me get Trey Pound. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
So, with all this, it seems so obvious, like the influence is there. So, like the fact that they go out of their way to to hide that or not acknowledge it. I just don't understand, especially from our people where we don't go out of our way to we acknowledge everyone. So just with it being so obvious, I don't understand, and that ties into the whole reparations discussion. Like, in order to get that moving, it's almost like we have to. There's absolutely no recognition, like even though it's so obvious. And uh, is it necessary to get past that hurdle before we make any progress? Because it seems like as soon as you bring it up, the they start bringing up arguments against the whole claim. Um, I'm just not sure what to make of that.
Okay, I'm not sure what to make of your question here. Why should it bother us?
Because the whole claim, the basis of that is like the what you're saying warrants the recognition.
Well, it sounds like he's getting a massage in one of those Asian places. So, brother, I'm gonna have to let you go here. But let me go ahead and get Black Lion. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Be one to the family. Apologize. I just felt that I had to tune in because this is a great space. TBA for holding it and giving us good knowledge and wisdom as you always do. And to go to the topic, it's just simply they hate us because they ain't us. They know we set the trends. We've been setting the trends for centuries now. Even when we was in shackles, and now that we're free and free-minded, we're only elevating. And like you said before, Africa has not, or any other one of those Caribbean countries, have not produced anything since they have not created a culture, created a way of living, a lifestyle that anybody follows since we were in bondage. So simply, they hate us because they ain't us. And I land my plane there. Be one to the family.
Thank you very much. All right, let me get Sage. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Brother Black, just here to tell you that I can hear you just fine. I don't know what was these other people's problem. I do
I
want
think
to
it's a
say
ban. I think it's a bandwidth with Twitter Space. So, like I say, Elon Musk has been messing with him, but I think it's a bandwidth issue because other Twitter Spaces were having the same problem. So, most likely, I don't know if they're switching to a server or whatever, but other folk were having the same issues. So if I had to guess, I think it's a bandwidth issue. Some folk were hearing it, others weren't. So that's why I'm saying that. But we're doing a lot better. They're doing a lot better now. So we're doing better. I'm glad to have you with us here tonight, too, brother. You've been putting in a lot of good work up there and everything. What's on your mind?
I appreciate you, man. I want to say this too. What you said about restaurants up here, truthful with that. We don't necessarily mess with those Nigerian restaurants. I've been to one in my life, and I most likely will not repeat. But let's stay to the topic about Luther Campbell. I think this is more of like a he wants to be relevant. You know, no one was talking about Luther Campbell in 2020. So I think that this was a lane that he felt like if he put his 2 cents in, he would get attention. And now he has someone like yourself and Tariq and all that attacking him. So it's getting him clout he never had years ago. So again, he's not on no top 50 list. I've never heard Two Live Crew ever being mentioned outside of one song. So I think this is basically shadowboxing for us at this time. But I do like the fact that you brought up who controls culture. And I do think that the foundationals control it 100%.
Well, certainly, like I say, at this point here, you already have it. It's just really about making sure that people understand because confusion is a powerful thing. That's how you lose things. You lose things when you allow other people to come in and define you. And that dominant society couldn't do it. So they're seeing if they can get some other folks to get the steering wheel and ease it on out of our hands and then change what we are and redefine it. So that's what we're doing right now. We're simply making sure there's not confusion because confusion is how you end up losing things subtly. If they can't snatch it out of your hands, then see if you can get somebody to ease it on out of your hands. Thank you very much for checking in with us.
Before you go to the next person, I just wanted to address the people in the comments. There's a few comments that keep saying the control of the music industry, and I was wondering if you could speak on that.
Yeah, every once in a while you hear folks talk about control. Here's the real thing about it. Define control. Define run it. Because I can show you right now, and I don't want to go too far into it, but if I ever do another documentary, not saying I'm working on one now, but if I ever do another documentary, maybe I'll talk to somebody in the music business, and maybe we'll be able to address that kind of thing as well. Because throughout time, what has happened is you've had people who wanted to be, show is a word this long and business is a word this long, and too often there have been a number of folks who latched on to the business part of the show business late. You had other groups who their talent wasn't getting on stage. Their talent was finding easily maneuvered individuals. It wasn't like they necessarily went and looked for the best and brightest. Now, of course, you would have you tended to do church. They tended to come up better than others. You know, that was something that you had there. Folks who came to the Black church, you know, Smokey Robinson, Jackie Wilson, you know, those kind of folks there tended to do better because you had folks around you. And back then we had communities of working professionals. So you had more of a buffer there at the time around you to make sure that you understood things like, hey, if you're signing your name on a contract, that means something. Distinctions between them and anybody else. I don't make those kind of distinctions because you're saying Jewish, but you really, folks tend to still up here and try to run away from the fact these are white folk here that you're talking about. It's not like the lot changed with anybody else. So trying to focus on one group is really a way of saying, well, this small group over here has been the issue. No, you can't reduce it down to just that. If you do, you're going to be deceived. This is how you wake up one day, you're Arabs, and your situation hasn't changed. That's how that kind of thing occurs. So in the music business, Black folk have always been the innovators. And what do you do when you got somebody who's innovating? You try to Thomas Edison them. When you have somebody who is innovative and you got backing, you've just got the ability to increase the magnitude and the exposure of what they do. So you try to Thomas Edison them. As you're all familiar, Thomas Edison didn't come up with all that. Thomas Edison owned a company. And what he did was he beat everybody else to the patent office. That was Thomas Edison's real business. Thomas Edison's real business was not coming up with ideas himself. His real business was purchasing or stealing ideas from other people and then beating them to the patent office. Now, Black folk as a group, that's going to obviously put you at a disadvantage. Obviously, because if you've been deprived of the backing to go off and do something like that, you're trying to work your way up. Add to that you're dealing with a system where in a lot of these judicial cases and things, Black folk found themselves on the bad end of things. And you put all of that together, and that's how you end up there. So definitely you can point to that and say that, and that's not to say that there isn't any truth to it. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that operationally speaking and put into practice, Black folk, these guys have their business model easily manipulated individuals. Why do you think you're showing up today and here's Migos and Cardi B and Kodak Black? Why do you think that's what you have today? Individuals who aren't reading their record deals, shout out Kanye, by the way. Folk who are not reading their record deals. You all got to understand, they made a conscious effort. Michael Jackson was a huge ass wake-up call for the music industry. He was a gigantic wake-up call that if you allow a smart artist, he'll be the one writing contracts and telling you that you have to sign it. So the music industry has recalibrated itself around the idea that we need to find a sucker. Talent isn't necessary anymore. We just need someone to perform it. Remember, Nicki Minaj went to acting school before she ever got into, quote, rap music. Remember? I talked about that years ago. For those of you who know, she went to acting school. So she thought she was on her way to Hollywood. And the music industry now runs itself like the movie industry. They write the album in advance. They own it because they wrote it, and they have the publishing. So they just go find somebody to perform the songs. And that's what you have on stage now, are performers. And these are individuals who don't own anything and don't run it. So genuine talent is still out there. But guess what? We built rap music from the underground. Genuine talent is still out there, but it's underground. If you're looking at the Grammys or whatever, those are the places that these non-Black folk can pump dollars into to raise somebody's profile. But that's because they own the album. The album is just a product. So I want us to get used to the idea that we're not going to just sign a record deal so we can get famous. That's been the tool they've been using. Find somebody easily manipulated, easily intellectually dominated. They will perform the album, sign away all of their rights, and then we can dispose of them and move on to the next one. Our job is to make sure that doesn't happen within. Let me go ahead and get Black Renaissance. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah. That statement that you said about the music industry, that was so on point, like as far as the performance wise and stuff like that. Like Atlantic Records is definitely doing that, but like just, having these like cookie cutter songs already done, I believe like Young Berg spoke to that hit He spoke to that on the Joe Budden podcast. So exactly what you said, that's correct about that. But I want to get to the Uncle Luke, Uncle Tom situation. Uncle Luke, he ain't never been about, like no real hip hop conversations. For the most part, what he has done for hip hop has basically like dragged us into the dirt. You know what I'm saying? Like he keep on bringing up this, I fought for free speech, and we still don't even have no like real free speech. We getting censored left and right on, on Twitter and all these social networks or whatever the case may be. But more or less, he definitely brought that like, like that. Like you said, like that ass shaking, pardon me, I don't want to curse, that butt shaking, like, vulgar, kind of just misogynistic view of women that later was thrown on the Black man, because they don't put that like, necessarily on immigrants or whatever the case may be. All those stigmas fall back on the Black man, and then people like Uncle Luke, Uncle Tom, whatever the case may be, he go and hide behind Blackness, and then, when Black people kind of call him out, because I don't know what he was really like, what his whole deal today about like making all these whatever that bullshit, pardon me, like that whack freaking title that he made about about FBAs or whatever the case may be. And it's like, dude, you always harbor these sentiments. You know what I'm saying? Like it don't, people go right nothing crazy. You know what I mean? Because I clearly, literally love FBA to my dying breath. So you never gonna see me make a topic, or spaces like that. You feel me? But little by little, he was like kind of gearing in that like area. He pulled up Roland Martin. Then he had that other guy, Steven, who always saying little slick stuff. He's always kind of like teetering the fence, and you can find little spaces where he's saying little weird stuff and stuff like that. So I think Uncle Luke, Uncle Tom, he really speaks to like that, not only that on the fence Tether who's hiding that anti-Black sentiment, and if you push him just enough, it'll come out. And I'm gonna land my plane with that. And you know what I mean? Shout out to you. You know what I mean? You definitely one of the master teachers, bro.
Thank you very much for joining us here tonight. We appreciate that. Let me get Dewan B. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hello, Brother Jason. Thank you for allowing me to speak. You said something real big in your broadcast yesterday when you talked about our music and the militancy and the fact that we've always had some sort of we've always challenged the system to our music. We can date that back to ragtime, the cakewalk. The cakewalk was literally a dance imitating white people. We've always stood up to it. Billie Holiday, Strange Fruit. She lost her career in New York for 4 years from singing that. We've always had that component to our music through even our dance music. Just because we had a party song didn't mean we couldn't give a message in it.
Oh,
Steve
brother, I'll
Harrington.
go even further than that. I mean, whether you're talking about Nina Simone, I don't want to use her name. I shouldn't do that. In the music industry, we're the only people in the world in our culture, and any of the people who've come into it. Let me say that one more time. Our culture has benefited everyone, including the people who've come into it.
Yes.
We're the only people whose music criticizes the damn record label that put the music out.
Yes.
We're the only folk who will make an album and be dissing the damn president of the record label that put it out. You show me where the hell that was done before we came along. Think about that for your album or produced it. You got a diss track on there about them. We're the ones who created that. So that's if you want to know about how our contribution to music, I'll give you that one right there.
You're right. You look at James Brown. James Brown had a song called Funky President. You got to get over before you go under. Built the factory and owned the job. He was saying that in his music in 1968. Michael Jackson had a song where he criticized the district attorney of Santa Barbara County after he got out called DS on the History album. It's a staple in black music from Marvin Gaye to Stevie Wonder's Big Brother to the Temptations to Aretha Franklin. We a staple in our music through Ice Cube, that we challenge what's going on. If you're not doing that, you truly cannot call yourself a soul artist. And Luther Campbell is someone who I regret now that he's come out over the last 2 weeks. I regret putting his sound on my music tree. I have a music tree. I've traced 400 years of black music and put it on one tree so people can see it. Created here in North America, and now I almost regret putting Luther Campbell on it because that whole mind ushered in degeneracy. And it wasn't just Luke; they were fighting NWA at the same time. So Luke can't claim sole ownership of the whole advisory thing, but so it's one of those things where we see what's going on, and I thank you for pointing out this part on culture about us. You know what I mean? We need this.
Well, thank you very much for giving us a call about that. Let me go ahead and talk about this parental advisory thing. For those of you who are under the age of 40, you don't remember how that started. The parental advisory started back in 1985. Tipper Gore, former Vice President Al Gore's wife, she was part of a committee of people who were concerned about what was happening in the music. And a lot of, stuff was happening, was changing. There was a lot of profanity in there, or at least some risky themes in there. And they wanted to make it clear, they wanted to discourage that kind of thing at the music stores. So if you'll remember, originally at that hearing, there was John Denver and Dee Snider. There was a congressional hearing and Dee Snider was there. Dee Snider of the rock group Twisted Sister. This was 1985. This is way before any of these groups, Two Live Crew, this is way before any of that came along. Hell, you're still in Run DMC and Sugar Hill Gang territory. These people, that was back in 85. Go and don't believe me, go Google it for yourselves. Dee Snider considered that to be his claim to fame. He was the one he even did an interview. He's like, tell Luke and them, fall back. We were the original ones who had the government worried about the albums. It started because of us. Now, the official black and white parental advisory sticker, I think Two Live Crew was the first one that got one of those. But hell, you can go take a look at Ice-T's Rhyme Pays album. Ice-T put an explicit lyrics warning on his Rhyme Pays album. You can go take a look at that for yourselves. Two Live Crew might have had the first one, but here's the real thing about it. The question isn't, did you get a parental advisory sticker? The question is, did you get a parental advisory sticker on an album that impacted, research, and improved it? That is something that folk want to emulate. NWA changed the way the world looked at music. It changed the way the world looked at it. Two Live Crew brought a strip club to your CD player. After that was gone, nobody was sitting up saying, hey, I want to be the next Two Live Crew. Everybody wanted to be the next NWA. Nobody wanted to be the next Two Live Crew. That's why the real reason you can't compare anybody to Two Live Crews, because nobody wants to be it. Which is why when I asked my question on Twitter today, hey, where does Two Live Crew rank among the top 50 rap groups of all time? And everybody pretty much had the same answer: 51, 103. So if you really want to know what that's about, if you want to get the real history about that, if your only claim to fame is, hey, I could make parents cringe in the corner, I'm going to say that's not very much of an accomplishment. It really isn't. Back in the 80s, remember we had Larry Flint going into anti-obscenity, a lot of anti-obscenity legislation and things like that. There were movement going on. And Two Live Crew, among others, was a recipient of that. Two Live Crew, Too Short, NWA, we can go down the list. So at that moment in time, that was a rare moment in time where a lot of people were gaining a lot of free publicity by their album being forbidden fruit, if you will. That's what the thing was. It was about, is your album forbidden fruit? Because these guys were capitalizing on that. Two Live Crew wasn't the only one that didn't. By the police, NWA and others, same thing happened to them. Two Live Crew made it a court case about it. But the bottom line is that wasn't a win for quote unquote freedom of speech, because they weren't the only ones doing that. They just had the biggest megaphone for it. But let's be clear, they weren't the only ones. So that's a huge misconception for those of you who were not there at the time. Those of us who were, remember, actually, they're making a lot more hay out of it now. What he really needs to be talking about is how his music is image, and they can't wait to work with him and be the next Two Live Crew. Now, that would be an accomplishment. You see, if you really changed the landscape in a way that was constructive and beneficial, people would be talking about wanting to be the next Two Live Crew today, wanting to work with y'all today, and wanting to emulate what you did today. Kendrick Lamar specifically cites and mentions NWA when he talked about his music. Kanye West and others, they specifically cited NWA. Nobody cites Two Live Crew. Hell, boys don't cite Two Live Crew. You figure that would be low-hanging fruit. You don't even see the white boys mentioning Two Live Crew. That should tell you something. Let me get Sherry Springs. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, Jason. Thank you for letting me talk. I think, I don't know if anyone said this already, but I think Professor Black Truth said it best where a couple months ago where he said, if it's y'all's, then y'all could take it back. And they can't, like, just period. I remember in undergrad when I went to an HBCU and I had a Caribbean professor who basically told our whole class that we don't have culture. And then he went on saying basically that, like, criticizing sampling and saying that that's not music and all this other stuff. And I think that's actually the first time I interacted with that kind of like anti-black vitriol, basically. But mind you, he's saying this to a classroom of foundationals as a Caribbean man trying to make it in the US. And like back then I didn't even realize how big of an issue it would become. You know what I'm saying? Now that we see what's going on these past couple months and years. But and I can't speak, I'm only 25, so I can't really speak too much to like Two Live Crew and all them, but I see it when it comes to like music. It's like in this classroom, we're not talking about like the stuff that's made over in Jamaica or wherever the case may be. You're trying to debate the music that's being made on this soil, but you're over here trying to make it on this soil and disrespecting us to our face. So, I just wanted to put that like 2 cents in there.
All right, let's go ahead and discuss that right quick. Like I say, tonight, I'm glad we can go ahead and deal with this. Taking it from somebody, and I'm a musician myself. I mean, a real musician. I play instruments back in the day when we played instruments. There's a saying in art: good artists create, great artists steal. So for those of you who might be too young to have ever heard that, by the way, there is a saying in art: good artists create, great artists steal. So in reality, a lot of your so-called greatest works and whatnot, we talk about Game of Thrones. We all know that's originated from J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. We can go down the list. So when someone sits up here and tries to tell you about trying to make it some idea of we're going to invent the wheel, they're going to get into real sticky territory really quickly in that regard. Anybody can take 4 seconds of a song and play it. Anybody can do that. What you cannot do is take 6 seconds of a song, add a kick drum to it, put the right lyrics over it, because remember, you have to introduce something to it and then make it you can't do. And here's the other thing. You might be able to get away with that once. If you doubt this is music, you might be able to get away with that one time. You can't go multi-platinum for a damn decade, and that's not talent. With all due respect to your whacked out Caribbean professor and anybody else who might try to sympathize with that, people, you don't go multi-platinum with 2 and 3 decades. And that's anybody can do it. If anybody could do it, damn it, they'd all be out there doing it. We all got access to the same damn technology today. If anybody could do that, you'd be doing it. You'd be doing it. That's not the way that works. Everybody heard Parliament Funkadelic. After Dre and them started sampling, there was a whole bunch of folks who sampled. Most of them never got seen. You don't get to do this for over a decade, and it is accidental. And this is coming from me as somebody who actually plays instruments. I'm someone who's formally musically trained. Let's just be very, very clear. That's not something, when somebody tries to diminish that and whatnot, you might be able to do that for a one-hit wonder. I don't know. If I was going to be a one-hit wonder and sampling was going to be the way in which I made money, I don't know. Maybe I'd make a song called "Me So Horny," and yeah, maybe that's what I would do. Maybe I would do that. Maybe that would shore that argument up. But as far as having a whole culture, you can't build a culture on mediocrity. That's not the way that works. Mediocrity doesn't span the globe. You see, there's such a thing as a discriminating ear. I want y'all to follow me here. There's such a thing as a discriminating ear. You see, there's a reason why Simon Cowell can choose an idol. Because he's responsible for finding the person who has the talent so that these record labels can put the money into them and get a return on their investment. Not everybody can do that. And so these individuals, when we started doing this and sampling, it was like, okay, the person who originally wrote this song, there's a gem within this. There's about 4 or 5 seconds within this song that transcends the rest of the song. But they didn't do that. They played that, and that was it. I think it was Isaac Hayes' Sunshine. I think it was Isaac Hayes had a song back in the day called Sunshine, I believe it was. I'm going to make sure about that before I say that. I want to say Sunshine was the name of it, and I might be wrong about that. It's been a long time since I looked it up. It's literally been decades here. But Isaac Hayes, he had a song, and it's the riff from it was used by CPO for Ballad of a Menace. It was used by Puffy. What was it? He called it Puffy's theme. So those are the kind of things right there that we were able to do. It's just a few seconds. It's just a few seconds. That's it. Just a few seconds. And yet there was a gem up in there that other people hadn't been able to hear of. There was a gem in there that other folks didn't see. So understand, you need a discriminating ear to be able to pick that out. You can't just do that anywhere. You need a discriminating ear to be able to pick that out. That's not the kind of thing that you sit up here and try to discount. You try to do that if you don't understand what you're actually hearing. If you don't actually understand what you're hearing, that can be a problem. Okay, I just looked it up here just to make sure there's Isaac Hayes' Joy. I don't know why I was thinking Sunshine, but Isaac Hayes' Joy. Go listen to the song from CPO, for those of you who remember Ruthless Records, CPO, Ballad of a Menace. Go listen to Puffy's theme, and then go listen to where it came from, Isaac Hayes' Joy. Just a few seconds in there. Just a few seconds. That's what we did all over the place. Dre Day. Eric Sermon music, sampling Marvin Gaye. You can't do that on a consistent basis, and that's an accident, or that's a quote lack of talent. You heard something in there that even the original artists themselves did not hear. They didn't hear it. So that would be my response to your professor there. And there's a reason why folk are doing that today. You can't sit up here and your ear hears that same, you go to one song for another song. It's like, hey, I roll that back. Did you hear that? You know, if we add a kick drum and some backing violins and the right lyrics to it, this is going to thump. It's like, what are you talking about? We didn't hear anything. Okay, let me get into the studio so I can clip this part out so you can hear this. And then when you get done, there you go. So like I said, that would be my response to him. Thank you very much for giving us a call. Let me get John V. Go ahead and.
Hey, what's going on, bro?
Okay, your volume is real low, John. I'm not sure if you're standing 15 feet back from your phone, but your volume is real low.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can actually hear you now. What's on your mind?
Yeah, man, you pretty much touched on everything I was gonna say. You know, when it was talking about how the culture is going with the music and all that, especially with the parental advisories and all that. You know, back when Dolores Tucker and all them was going after Pac and going after all those other guys. So he's pretty much caught up in that movement too. So he can't really stake claim to that at all. And you know, you spoke on other artists who were sampling music. You know, that's definitely a talent that they were able to, especially like with Dr. Dre. He's able to pick stuff out of different songs and make a totally different song out of it. So yeah, you know, our culture is our culture, and everybody bites off of it. Everybody takes a chunk. Everybody grabs hold of it. Everybody follows it, uses it, and the difference between us and them is that we'll take it and we'll add to it and we'll compound it and make it something totally and still pay homage and pay respect to who we got it from. So, you know, that's the biggest difference. You know, it's a lot of paid opposition out there, you know, and I believe that even back then, you know, they came after Luke so tough with the ban in the USA and all that stuff. Now he's switching his tune over and he's caping for Democrats. You see what I mean? So, you know, Democrats are spreading money around, they're spreading clout around, and it's a lot of clout chasers out here that's trying to get a little bit of that money, get back relevance. So it's a lot of, you got to be mindful that a lot of those people up here, they were sent to be opposers. So you can't really be surprised and can't really be upset because you know that they're paid opposition. Thanks for letting me speak.
Thank you very much for checking in with us here tonight. We appreciate that. Chase Savage, go ahead and unmute yourself.
B1 family, peace to everybody in the room.
What's on your mind?
Besides Twitter, keep trying to break good things up when people start building, you know what I'm saying? Brother on the topic, bro, I honestly believe that we're the vanguards of black society, black culture. You know what I'm saying? It's always been on us. And, you know, we just got to keep building, brother. You know, I appreciate your work. And, you know that there's other brothers out here putting in work right along with you, brother. You know, that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you very much for giving us a call here. Let me get New Justice. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
How you doing, Jason? Appreciate your time. I'll try to be short. I actually just came from Luther's thing. He said that he went on this sister that was now she didn't call herself foundation, but she did describe that she is a woman that from descendant of slaves, and he just went off on her, saying the most coonish babble I've ever heard in my life. I can't believe this man was like this. Wow! I hope somebody screen capture it. It's ridiculous. But yeah, he definitely a paid shield. You have to see that. I don't know if anyone can screen capture that, but it's horrible. But yeah, we always call coach. I'm from Florida. You drive around here, not just singling out them, but my people on my dad's side are Geechee. So a lot of times they think I'm from the Caribbean, and they talk real slick because they think I'm from the Caribbean, and I'm not. And so don't be fooled. It's not just Haitians, but all of them talk real slick. And most of these people, They always like, well, I'm born here. But if you check them, all their friends are from the Caribbean or Africa. They don't really be friends with Black Americans like that. Wow.
Yeah, and like I say, for younger folk here, I want to put you something here. The folk you hang around are going to determine how you grow, how you turn out. So the ones who, if they're not foundational and they hang around us and they're picking up the way, that's one thing. The ones who are hanging around you and then they really gravitate back to all that, that's what you got to watch for. The ones who are smiling at you and then perfectly comfortable back in that environment. Because if they're becoming like you, they're not going to be so comfortable in their home environment anymore. They're going to be like, hey, I found something better. And if they have respect for that, they're not going to be able to just go back the way they were. That's not the way that works. A mind expanded doesn't return to its original parameters again. So that's one of the things I want you all to watch out for there is see what's happening. If they've really been influenced and if it's really been made an impression on them, then you're going to see a quantitative change in how they do things. Thank you very much for giving us a call. Let me get 556. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Ooh, can you hear me?
556. Try again. Unmute yourself.
Me now?
Yes. What's on your mind?
Yeah, it's just kind of funny that all of a sudden you got Luther Campbell and now you got Big Tigger. We're having this discussion about Black American culture, hip hop and all of this, and all of a sudden you got Luther Campbell and now you got Big Tigger coming out. He's anti-reparations. He's blocking everybody who has anything to disagree, anytime you disagree, and just kind of piggybacking off John V, where he's, the Democratic shields, and they just bring
Good.
him out of the woodwork. So just, keep an eye out.
Good. This is exactly what you want. People. Before now, they had magazines to hide behind, cable TV networks to hide behind, record labels, and the music industry, and the entertainment industry, and the media complex to hide behind. So they could do these kind of things and harbor these kind of sentiments, and nobody knew. This is good. This is excellent. Now you get to see them for what they really are. No filter, no PR people, no editing at the television station or the cable TV network, no bleeding, no cutting the feed or whatever. Now you get to hear it and see exactly what it is. So we should be grateful that finally they've been handed a microphone that they control, and they now are demonstrating what they actually feel. So the only thing we really want to make sure is documenting this. I think he was on when I was on. The only thing we really want to make sure is documenting these things, because when they really do go off and stuff, they're going to be counting on nobody documenting it. So they can go ahead and throw a rock and hide their hand. They're not really going to want to stand by these things. Let's be clear. They don't really want to stand by what they believe. That's why they do not want to discuss it, debate it, anything. We'll sit up here. Anybody who calls up, you don't see me sitting up here saying, oh, I'm not going to talk to them. I'm like, okay, I demand you call up and ask your questions. Remember, I was on here for 6 hours one time, 5 hours, 4 hours. We don't have a problem doing that. We are comfortable in our skin, and our position is easily defended. Somebody who knows they can defend their position, yeah, they want to turn off all the microphones real damn fast. Can you blame them? Thank you very much for checking in with us here. Let me get, who is this? Okay. Meech Cash Out, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hello? You can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. What's on your mind, such as it is?
All right, for sure. I seen the topic. It say who control Black American culture, and I want to say it's the media. It's all the media. Like whatever folks see online is like the next big thing. Like that's what they want to do as a Black person. That's who you want to follow. You just want to follow what's hot right now. You know what I'm saying? The same way we was all wearing baggy t-shirts back in 03 because of the media, because of Black media and stuff. The same way we got now wearing tight clothes because of the media. The same way, you know what I'm saying? Everybody want to move around like that.
Okay. Some of the fellows on that lean and picking up the Twitter space. So let me get Brandon Jefferson. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hello?
Yes, you're on. What's on your mind?
Hello? Yeah, sorry about that. I was my phone switched over Bluetooth. But yeah, I was gonna say Black American culture
Hello.
is controlled by the dominant society, but it's ours. We just got to get it back.
I agree. Thank you very much for giving us a call here. Let me get FBA Empress. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Peace, family. B1. Hi, Jason. How are you?
Black first as always. What's on your mind?
So I just real fast, like I got your notification like an hour ago, but I was working. So as soon as I came out the door, I jumped into this space and I picked the group with the most people in it. And I clicked on this man yelling and screaming and cursing. And I was like, I know Jason ain't letting nobody talk to him crazy like that. And I looked, it was the host, it's the Luther Campbell guy. And he was just saying all this crazy stuff. And he was like, I'm not a part of no group. I'm a part of Nigga Group America. And I was like, yeah, I got to get up out of there. So then I looked and then I came in here. But yeah,
Yeah, what he's showing you is that was the real them 30 years ago. That's what he's showing. And that's good. This is exactly what it should be. Let it be made plain, let it be clear, let able to recognize it for what it is, so the people are not under any illusions anymore. So this is actually a very good thing. I'm saying that from the beginning. This is a very good thing. Let him be what he really is, and then see if he wants to try to defend that. Don't worry, he'll be backtracking before it's over. He's going to be backtracking before you know it. But yeah, when you put pressure on people, when you apply a little bit of pressure, the real thing comes out. Pressure doesn't corrupt people. It doesn't corrupt character. It reveals it.
facts. We're something right. B1 family, thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you very much for giving us a call here. Let me get Pulse Chain. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yo, can you
Okay,
hear me?
you're on. What's on your mind?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. You can be heard. What is on your mind?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on who's controlling Black American culture. I think it's social media, and I think it's CNN as well. Yeah, so that's about all I wanted to say. Thanks.
Okay. Well, certainly when CNN starts making soul food, and well, I'll believe that. Don't, folks, you don't have to overcomplicate it. It really, really isn't. But like I say, they're off on their thing. Let me get calm, always black and prosperous. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
What's up, family? Anybody ask one more time if y'all can hear me? Yes, we can hear you. But Luke, I don't know if he's out of touch with the Black American pulse. Um, but for him to choose Roland Martin, I don't know if he's doing it on purpose. But I believe it is because he has Steven up there as a coon and he can articulate more his points, you know. And Luke is a shield, and the timing of it says a lot. And what he's done to our culture, I'm like, I want to ask him like, what's the change of heart? But as soon as you do that, he gets disrespected, reverted back to his old ways, like a leopard never changes his spots. Like this man was so disrespectful to this lady, he couldn't even get it out because he was. I mean, she couldn't even, finish her point, and he like kicked her out. And if that was a white woman or anybody else of any other color, he would have been respectful. And I don't agree with that. And I left the room as soon as I seen you, Mr. Jason, and you had your program going on. I'm like, I'm going somewhere that's going to empower my people, not tear us down. And I'm going to a real space, and that's all I had to say, man. Thank you for hosting this space, and thank y'all for being here.
Thank you very much for checking in with us here. And like I say, this is good. This is very good. I hope you all get to see the ugly side. I hope you get to see that kind of thing. Now that they can't conceal it. And understand this, he did this with help. He's got help in there. He's got somebody to sit up here and block people before they can get on and turn off their microphone and stuff. That's what he did with help. Could you imagine what he would be doing to have help? Could you imagine that? Can you imagine what it would look like and what it would be if he didn't have that? So this is the real thing. And that's good. This is exactly what I want. I want you all to see this. No more 2 Live Crew records. No more one-hit wonders. No more guessing and hoping for the best. No, it's time for you to meet some of your heroes. It's time for you to meet some of them and let the real damn thing come out. Let them say what they really mean. Don't hide from it. Let them come on up, come out here center stage and speak to the public and say and show exactly what you really are. I think that's a great thing. And just prove Jason Black right that this is what you've always been. You've always been a gutter smut peddler. He's the kind of guy who would be selling a bunch of wristwatches from a trench coat. He's the kind of guy who'd be running whores from the back of a barnyard. So just let the real thing out. Let me get Chad. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
What up, Jason? B1 family. Pretty much to preface, I do want to state that I am a first-gen African immigrant, specifically from Nigeria. And to answer the question, who controls Black American culture, I would definitely say is the average Black American. I've confirmed this through and through because I came here when I was about 9 years old. And during my middle school years, I found it real hard to pretty much assimilate, even after I got rid of the accent. And like you were saying earlier in the space, everything is different. You know, we dress submissive, we act submissive, and I couldn't figure out exactly why I wasn't getting the reception I needed from my peers. So basically, one of my classmates pulled me over one day. He told me, "Hey, you're wearing the wrong shoes, you're wearing the wrong pants, you're wearing the wrong shirts. Everything is just wrong. So you need to start over." So you pretty much gained me up from then. Going to high school, everything was like a complete 360. So ever since then, I've pretty much been like B1 before the term was even coined by you. And I've just pretty much, I consider myself Black before anything else, regardless of my tribe or origin country, because it's just so many instances I've been in with the police. They don't care about none of that shit. They don't know your name. They don't care how foreign you are. You're just Black. You look Black. They're gonna treat you Black. So whoever controls it is definitely the average Black American man or woman. Back in those days, it was easier because everyone would pretty much just check you at certain points of life. But now it seems everything has pretty much gotten soft and just weak to where no one's checking each other or checking disrespect from any angle. So,
Well, you know, for the long time, we've been on this kick where, and like I said, your experience is typical because you couldn't have a Black Nigerian presence in America if they were not protected and if they were not groomed by foundational Black folk. You couldn't have it. You couldn't make it because you have no support structure. So your experience is actually typical. What will happen here is, you know, the kids will be like kids. They might crack on you for a minute, but you know, somebody's going to take you to the side and say, "Hey, let's get you straight. Let's get you gamed up. Let's get you right." And that's just the process. That's just passage or passage. That's all it is.
word,
When you go into these other places, you couldn't have that experience going back to a Nigerian high school. That wouldn't be what it would be. You just be the little weird kid in the back of the class, and nobody's even talking to you unless you're white. Now, if you're white, they'll all be dancing and singing, and you know. But other than that, they're not going to treat you the same way. So our thing is that is the culture. That's the way we do things. We want to make sure you're right. We're going to make sure you're good. We're going to make sure that people put you in a situation where you can be mistreated for the long term. The whole point of cracking on you is to make it clear. It's like, okay, it ain't up to code. But children don't have a vocabulary to be able to explain it. They just know this ain't right. It's not up to code. As you get older, other folks are gonna let you know, hey, let's get your swag straight. Hey, dude, it look like you buying all your stuff in City Trends. Let's go ahead and get you right. Let's get you together on this. That's the way we do things. And when we get done, you're gonna be solid. When we get done, you're gonna be solid, you're gonna be straight. And that's the way in which you build people up. So once you get your memo that is not up to par, we're going to go ahead and get straight. And that goes for the females also. That goes for the females also. You take a leg up of their whole swag, awkward as it can be sometimes. They're just basically trying to do their best imitation of what they see over here. And the real problem comes from resistance to it. If they would just go ahead and accept it 110% and just say, hey, this is what it is, it would go a whole lot easier. It would go a whole lot easier. You can't fuse what we do with something else. Like that's what I said at the beginning. You can't fuse what we do here with something else and it get better. You can fuse it with something else and make it worse, but you can't fuse it and make it better. Because the tribalism of it doesn't allow that. The tribalism doesn't allow that to occur. So I'm glad you gave us a call here tonight. Please do check in with us again. Let me get Mr. Ali. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hey, sir, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. What's on your...
All right. And yeah, I was just trying to answer the question, who controls Black American culture? And this is just what I think and my observation. I think it's a combination of Black people and corporate America. And maybe back in the days, let's say before the 1960s, like civil rights were, or even before that, where Blacks were segregated, the culture was more grassroots and just in Black American communities. But then since America is a corporate country and corporations run everything, like the hats are made by Nike, the shoes are made by Reebok. I think it's a combination of whatever they want to push the culture or the trends, whichever way they want it to go. Because like you said, when I go overseas and travel, I've never seen anybody walk trying to act like a rock star or wear anything else but what you would consider Black American culture. But part of it is because everybody wants to be like Black Americans because the culture is cool. But part of it is corporate America pushes it, and that's the image and the companies that expand it. And I think they could take the culture anyway, because, for example, when I watched Black Panther, like the trailer for it the first time, I thought it was going to be about like Black Americans and like Black American actors, but it seemed like it was more African and like Pan-African type of thing, where I could see them pushing it that way in the future, where they could consider Black to be international or global, and these are the
Okay, well,
dress code,
it
this is what's
actually
cool.
is. I mean, it actually is. You live in a capitalist society, so you live on a capitalist planet. So marketing things, putting things on the market is just the way of the world. But let's be very, very clear. There is a difference between manufacturing and marketing. There is a difference between creating a trend and following one. Now, when you take a look at places like Calvin Klein and whatnot, and they have, quote, designers, but for the most part, even it doesn't matter who the designers are, they take their cues from what they see on the streets. They take their cues from subcultures, with so-called subcultures. That's the way major corporations operate. They don't create anything. Let me dissuade you all of that illusion. Major corporations don't create anything, especially in the entertainment space. They go out and go look for something that's hot at a small level, and then they just go and put $100 million or $200 million behind it, so they can go make $1 billion. That's the business model. Let me give you an example. Hollywood, for the last 20 years, they've been using comic books as their feeder for their major motion pictures. Now, I'm not just talking about just Marvel or DC. You take a look at things like Wanted and, The Boys on Amazon. They're looking for something that's successful at a small level and has proven itself at a small level. And then they just come in and say, okay, we're going to put $100 million to it. The Walking Dead by Robert Kirkman and that cartoon Invincible on Netflix, both of them by Robert Kirkman. Those were all comic books that Robert Kirkman made. So the big corporations that come in, it's like, okay, your comic book was successful. Let's go ahead and put $100 million behind it. Let's put $200 million behind it. So they're not making anything. They look for things that are successful at a small level before it pops off and becomes international. Before that happens. So case in point, if you remember, over from BET, D. Brad, he was talking about how he used to work. I think he used to work at MTV, and he said all the white executives, all the white producers were watching BET. That was where MTV got their stuff from. All of them were watching BET. So let me get this straight. Black folk are watching MTV, and meanwhile, the producers and executives at MTV are watching BET to figure out what's hot and to figure out what they're going to use next, to figure out who they're going to bring up next. That's not accidental. That is the business model. So yes, they could make a pair of pants, but we changed completely the way they were worn. They could make a pair of shoes, but we fundamentally changed the way you did it. They could make a baseball cap. We fundamentally changed the way it was worn, the way it was used. We fundamentally changed that. They made t-shirts. We fundamentally changed that. I can keep going down the list. You can make a shoe, but that doesn't mean you can market it. That doesn't mean you can do that. You can manufacture these things, but let me tell you, if manufacturing alone guaranteed success, you wouldn't have an iPhone. The iPhone is what it is because of how it was marketed. It is what it is because of how they were able to put it together and be able to make it international, not just from manufacturing a touch screen cellular connected device. The way it's built, the way it looks. You take a look at their commercials. Let me give you one last example here. Take a look at McDonald's. I've used this example now for going on 3 decades of my life when it was first presented to me. What's your favorite hamburger? Practically none of you are going to say McDonald's. None of you are going to say your favorite hamburger is McDonald's. And yet, what's the biggest hamburger franchise in the world and always has been? McDonald's. Not even close. So it's not, what is McDonald's doing? They're not manufacturing a better burger. Damn sure isn't that. What are they doing over there that's got their numbers so big? It can't be what they're making. It must be, it can't be what they're making. It must be the way they're selling it. That must be it. Because you damn sure don't think it has the best quality. It must be the way they're selling it. And I submit, you tell me right now, do you think that McDonald's would change the way they do for anybody? Do you think they look at Five Guys and say, damn, we need to get some more authentic beef? Do you think they look at Wendy's and say, you know what, if we was using all grilled and put some bacon on it, we'd be good? Hell no. They know everybody takes the same shots at them. Everybody takes the same shots at them. There's a Wendy's commercial. It was talking about McDonald's, the way McDonald's makes their eggs. They're already pre-cooked and as patties, and then they microwave them or fry them up. The way we make our eggs by cracking them. Yeah, but you can't compare your sales numbers to McDonald's. And you can't compare your profit numbers to McDonald's. Yes, you've got the best genuine eggs that are third place in sales. You can try to break your arm patting yourself on the back about what you think it should be and what you think the people should want and what you think the people should value. But at the end of the day, when people have an opportunity to vote with their dollars, your ability to, quote unquote, manufacture a, quote, superior burger ain't beating those guys. So would McDonald's trade manufacturing for marketing? Does anybody think that McDonald's is sitting there tonight trying to figure out how to change their manufacturing process? And we should focus on that instead. Hell, the ice cream machines don't work half the damn time. That's become an international scandal. You have the best McFlurries that you can't get but 3 days out of the week. And yet, they outsell everybody else when the machines work. So if you really want to get into it about, oh, the corporations do this, corporations don't make things hot. Corporations go look for somebody who's got a spin on it that they could never think of, and then they go try to steal it. The real thing is for us to value our ingenuity, to teach our children to value that. Because what we need is a 50-year movement where all of our investment is in ourselves and we hold on to everything we've got 110% with an iron grip, and we make sure that we're willing to put in the next 50 years to make sure that everything we make hot, we keep it in our possession until it goes global. There's the part that's missing. Other folk hire us or buy us out, and then they take what we've created and they go send it global because, well, quote unquote, they already got the resources. We need to be willing to sit with it and say, you know what? We're not going to be where you are day one. In 50 years, we will be. When you take a look at the Great Leap Forward, when you take a look at Japan, when you take a look at Mexico, these are plans that take decades to get them where they are today. Decades. Hell, when you take a look at the United States of America. So we need to have a long-term view as foundational people that going forward, we're willing to do that. That we're not looking to build something up, to build up our seeds, and then some white conglomerate or non-black conglomerate comes in and buys it up. And then next thing you know, we're just sitting right back where we were again. Nipsey Hussle was really, a very good example of that. He was a very good example of that. Let me tell you, because I was in Los Angeles after he got killed. I was there after he got killed. And let me tell you, business was, I hate to say it, but business was booming after he was killed. The Crenshaw stuff was booming and didn't have to give it to anybody else. And guess what? It would have been booming it would be booming bigger if the man was still alive. His death didn't do that. It would have been booming even bigger if he was still alive. So for us, don't be deceived. Corporations don't think things hot. They look, even in the case of the iPhone, the guy who designed the iPhone, I'm talking about the way it looked. There's a white dude that Steve Jobs had hired from who designed the way it looked, made it very simplistic with the circle at the bottom, just very simplistic in its form. Thank you very much. Here's your $100. We're going to go make $100 trillion. Thank you for your artistic insight. Here's your $100. Apple didn't make that. They didn't make it, and they just made it. They didn't make it, and they really didn't make it hot. They put a whole bunch of money behind it, which is what they're doing now. And guess what? Can anybody name for me the innovation that Apple has had in the last decade? Okay, you had the iPods, you had the iPhone, you had the iPad. Tell me the major innovation that's come out of Apple in the last decade. In over a decade, tell me the last big thing that came out. AirPods? You want to say that's it? The Apple Watch? Want to try that one? No, they're waiting to see if they're biding their time and hoping that they can milk this iPhone thing every year, but they're trying to figure out something from the streets. They're trying to figure it out from the streets. Thank you very much for giving us a call here tonight. I don't want you all to ever be deceived about where these things come from. I know it can be very confusing. A lot of the time you can figure to yourself, well, I saw it at a store. The store didn't just sit up here and get a magic wand and a cauldron and call it up from the ether like Cthulhu. They get these things from places. They get these ideas, and for the most part, when it comes to style, innovation, functionality, they look to us. Everybody comes to us because in our situation here, we are the subculture. We are the place where the new ideas are cooked up. We don't want to be like everybody else. There's the real difference. We don't want to be like them. That's why corporate America has never really been able to get us to go along with the damn program. We got Congress and everybody. We want you to change the law so that we can wear our hair the way we want to wear our hair. We don't want to wear our hair like you. We don't want to be some Africanized, bastardized version of European hair. We've been fighting to make sure that they cannot keep us from having jobs because we want to keep our hair as our hair. We don't want to assimilate. And guess what, before it is over, you're going to have black CEOs with dreads, not that sideshow Bob mess Jay-Z got on his head. You're going to have real black CEOs with dreads, and guess what? It's going to be some white women too. And I said that. Mark my words. Just like Bo Derek back in the day, eventually you're going to have some white women, not just in MMA. They're already doing that in MMA, but you're going to have them in the real damn world doing their hair like that. They're going to call it something else. They're going to call it Irish twists or some mess like that. They're going to try that. We better not let that happen either. But they're going to be doing their hair like that. And you know why? Because if we stand firm, we are a dominant culture. We don't let people erase what we're doing. And we're not going to let them bully us out of it, as with everything else we've done. From our physical freedom to our social freedom to our financial freedom, that is our culture. And eventually that's going to win out. It always has. It will continue to do so. Some of these other folks find it weird because they're like, damn, how y'all do it? We insist on being who we are because we are comfortable in our own skin. Something that everybody else, they don't get comfortable until they start imitating and emulating us. Then they become comfortable, although most of the time taking a look at them, you can't tell. But people around the world, they don't get comfortable in skin with us. They're not imitating Ethiopians or South Africans or Sudanese. Nobody's imitating them to be comfortable in their own skin. 100% they imitate us. When they want to know how to get comfortable in their own skin, they come to the source. Now, you can't have a track record that's over a century and a half long and now has completely capitalized and co-opted the world, does it? And accidental. How many damn coincidences you got to have for that to happen from people who are only 13% of the American population, which is less than 10% of the world population? How in the hell can that happen? Answer, it doesn't. So I wanted to give you all a crash course here tonight in what culture is. Who controls the Black American culture? Is controlled from the foundation. Is controlled from the soil. It was written by the soil. Passed one generation to another by the soil. And we are making our statement now that we're not going to allow it to be bastardized and co-opted and hijacked from us, because we want our culture to remain intact. It changed the world. It continues to change the world. We wish for it to continue doing what it has done and to change the world. We don't want the world going backward. We want things to move forward, and we are the only ones who can do that. I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up here for you all tonight. I apologize that you didn't have a host to sit up here and yell and scream and curse at the female callers like some drunken reprobate.